Today we're going to learn how to build a banner using JavaScript. And as you guys can see in front of me here, I have a very basic demo of what we're actually going to be building in this episode. And as you guys can see, it's a very basic banner that switches after a few seconds. We can actually customize the amount of seconds it should take before it actually switches. And if I were to hover my mouse cursor inside this banner, you guys can see it actually pauses from actually changing because there's a nice feature for the users who might visit your website. And we can actually go ahead and change the images inside the banner using buttons. So if I were to click it, you guys can see we do actually change the banner images. Now, another thing about these banners is we can actually go ahead and add text to them. So right now I do have some text. This is not inside the image. This is actual HTML text that also changes with the banner when we do actually change the image inside the banner. Now the text will also have different positions, so we can style that using CSS. So we're going to go ahead and build this today. And the first thing I'm going to do in order to do this is I'm going to go ahead and open up an index.html file and just write the basic code we need to have in order to have a regular HTML page. So as you guys can see, I just have the very basic tags in here, but I have nothing else inside our document. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and open up what we're going to be building today, which is this empty page for now because we had nothing inside our document. And we're going to go ahead and get started on actually building it because we will be using CSS in this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and create a link tag so we can actually link to a styling sheet. You guys should know how to do this by now because this is just basic HTML. And inside the body tag, I'm going to go ahead and include a div. Now, when we create a banner, we need to have just a basic container we can actually have the banner images inside of. So right now, just to illustrate it for you guys, right now inside this demo, I have a box, which you guys see here, that has 3 images inside of it. We do actually have images next to each other. So we have an image over here on the left side, we have the center image, and then we have the image to the right. And then what I do is every couple of seconds, the images actually change places. And then the last image on the left side here actually goes back behind the images. And then it all starts over like a loop. So that's basically how we're going to do it in this episode. And in order to actually get this box in here, we do actually need to have a container. So inside the HTML document, I'm going to go ahead and create a div tag. Now this div tag is going to have a class set to main banner, just so we have something we can actually style inside the CSS. And I'm going to go ahead and include an ID because we're going to go ahead and use this ID when we include the JavaScript. So I'm going to say we have a main-banner. I'm just going to give it the same name as the class over here. Then afterwards, we're going to go ahead and include the images we're going to insert inside the banner. So we're just going to do the HTML first, then we're going to do the CSS, and then we're going to do the JavaScript. So the images I'm going to go ahead and insert is going to be not inside image tags, but inside div tags. And then I'm going to include the images as a background inside the div tags. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to have this text outside the banner. In order to do this, it was easier just to include the images as a background. Now, if you guys are interested in having the images I'm actually using for this episode, you can go ahead and find them in the description of this video. So you can just go ahead and download them so you have some material for this lesson here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a div tag. And inside this div tag, I'm going to go ahead and include a class. I'm going to call this class img_ban, img_ban, which stands for image banner. Then afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and give it an ID so we can actually target this image using JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one img_ban3. And then I'm going to go ahead and move the div tag, or at least the closing tag, down to the next line. Now you might be asking, why do we start using the third image? Because right now I said img_ban3, which stands for the third image we might have inside the banner. That's because when we load the HTML page inside the browser, I want to make sure that the first picture we need to actually see inside the banner has to be the one that loads the last. And the only reason for that is if I were to actually go to the website and load the images, then the images might end up actually loading on top of each other visibly inside the browser, and we don't want to actually see it. So in order to not see it, I want to go ahead and start with the third image first. And then I'm going to go ahead and include the second image, which is going to be the image banner number 2. And then the last one, which is going to be image banner number 1. So just to make sure you guys understand, the last one here is going to be the first image we see inside the browser. This one is going to be the second. And this one is going to be the third one when the banners do actually switch places inside the image banner. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up a new document and save it as style.css. So I'm going to say style.css, which is going to be the style sheet we linked to previously. So inside this document, I'm going to go ahead and include a couple of stylings, just some default ones to make sure we get the right effect inside the browser. So we're going to go ahead and say we have a multiplication symbol, which means that we're styling everything inside the website. I'm going to set a margin to 0. I'm going to set a padding to 0. And then afterwards, I'm going to go and give the entire web page a background color, just so we can actually see the banners inside the browser. So we're going to go and say we have the body tag. Going to open up the curly brackets and give it a background color. I'm going to go and call this one hashtag F3, 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 just to get some kind of light gray background color. Now this is basically all the default styling we need to have inside this website. So now we can actually get started on styling the actual banner inside the index page. So if we were to go down underneath the body tag, I can go and say we have a class called main-banner, curly brackets. And then inside this class, we're going to go and include a margin set to 0 auto. And the reason for that is that we do actually want to center the banner. And again, this main banner styling here is going to be the container for all the images inside the banner, which is the first div we created. So if I go back inside the class, I'm going to go and include a width and a height, because the container is going to determine the width and the height of all the pictures inside the banner. So we're going to go and set a width to 1200 pixels. We're going to set a height to 400 pixels. We're going to set a background color to hashtag FFF, which is going to be a white color just so we can actually see the container if we were to not have any kind of pictures in it yet. Then afterwards, we need to include a overflow set to hidden. And the reason for that is right now inside the banner, if I were to take the demo here, you guys can see we have one image inside the banner. Now when the image slides, it actually slides out outside the container. And the reason we can't see it when it slides out is because right now the container has an overflow set to hidden. So as soon as any kind of elements go outside the container, you can't see it. So that's basically what we're doing with the styling here. Now the last thing we need to include is a position set to relative. Now you might be asking, why do we need to have a position relative? Well, right now, the thing that actually determines how the banner should actually move, so right now it's actually inside the banner. If we were to click next, you guys can see that the banner slides out of the picture. Now the thing that determines that is going to be a position absolute inside our styling. So in order to have a position absolute included inside the container has to have a position relative. Otherwise the image is just going to be stuck at the bottom or something else. And we don't want to do that. So we need to have a position relative in a container if any of the child elements has a position absolute. At least if we want the images to stay inside the container. So that's basically why I'm including this. And this will actually make sense to you later when we do actually include the actual styling for the images. So let's go ahead and style the actual images inside the banner. We're going to go and include a class called main-banner. Then inside the main banner class, we have an ID set to image ban3. And then we're going to open up the curly bracket. So right now what we're actually doing is including the first image inside the banner. So before we can include the images inside this ID here, let's actually go and add the images inside our root folder. So right now you guys can see I have no images in here. I'm just going to go ahead and paste in the images I have in the download link in the description that you guys can also download. So I'm just going to go ahead and include it. And inside of here, you guys will notice that we have the two buttons that we can click on the sides. And we also have the images for the banner. I just call it banner 1, banner 2, and banner 3. You guys can give it some kind of other name if you want to. I just decided to call it this. Now inside our style sheet, I'm going to go and include the first image. So I'm going to set a background dash image, include the URL, which is going to be inside an image folder / banner3.jpg, like so. And then I'm going to go and include a background size. So I'm going to say background dash size. I'm going to set it to cover to make sure it covers the entire container that is inside of. Then we're going to set a background position. We're going to set it to center, just to make sure we do actually have the image centered inside this banner. And then we're going to set a background repeat to no repeat, like so. And now that we have the styling for the first image, let's actually go ahead and just copy paste this 2 more times because we need to have a banner 1 and a banner 2. So we're just going to set the second one to 2 and the last one to 1. Also make sure we change the image names inside of here. So we're going to change it to 1 and 2. Now, this was basically just including the images, but the actual div box that the images are inside of right now does not have a width and a height. So if we were to go back inside my index.html file, right now we just styled this div box here that has a class as image_ban and an ID as image_ban3. So right now we said that this ID here should have this background image, but we also need to tell it to have a height and a width. And we're going to go ahead and do that by styling the image_ban to make sure that all these 3 images have the exact same styling. So inside my style sheet, before we included the styling for the IDs, I'm going to go ahead and copy what we have down here just to have something to start with. And I'm going to go ahead and delete everything inside this styling. And instead of having an image_ban3 that is an ID, I'm going to change it to a class and say we have an image_ban. Then inside this image_ban styling, I'm going to go ahead and give it a width. I'm going to set it to 100% to make sure it goes all the way to left and right, and a height set to 100%, like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and give it a position absolute. And again, like I mentioned before, the position absolute is not going to work unless we have a position relative inside the main banner styling up here. So we need to make sure we have this position relative in order to get this working. So I'm going to say position absolute. Then afterwards, we're going to style a top and set it to 0 pixels, meaning that all 3 images is going to be at the top part of the container at all times. Now, in order to just get some kind of transition effects, when we do actually slide the images so it doesn't just pop really fast from one image to the other, I'm going to go ahead and include a transition, which again is not necessary, but just to get another effect, we can go ahead and do this. So I'm going to say transition all space ease dash in dash out, and let's set it to 500 milliseconds. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, paste it below. Make sure we have a WebKit styling as well. Again, if you're not familiar with this sort of styling, we're basically doing this to make sure it works inside all browsers. So I'm just going to go ahead and go down one more time. Let's actually go ahead and copy the slide we just did. And make sure we can get this working inside Firefox. So we're going to go ahead and say Mox, which is the Firefox browser, then the next line, and then include Opera. So I'm just going to say O. So now we have all the different browsers styled, and we can go ahead and get started on creating the JavaScript code in order to get this banner working. So right now, let's actually see what we have inside the browser. If we were to refresh, you guys can see that right now, we have one image inside a container that doesn't move. So right now, it's just a static image, and all these images right now are on top of each other. So if we were to actually remove this top image with the mountains, we would see the next image behind it. Okay, so what we need to make sure now is that using JavaScript, we're going to position these images so that one image is in the left side over here, one image is in the center, which it is right now, and the last one is going to be on the right side. So inside our index.html file, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom of our document, and I'm going to go ahead and include a script tag, like so. Now inside the script tag, we're going to include the JavaScript node to actually get this working here. Now inside the script tags, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a variable. I'm going to call this one banner status. And basically what this variable does is that it keeps count, or at least keeps track of which image is right now the current image inside the banner. So right now I'm going to go ahead and say we have a status set to 1, meaning that this is the first status inside the browser. So right now this would actually be the first image that has a status as 1. Then inside status number 2, we have the second image. And then in status number 3, we have the third image. The next one we're going to set is the timer for how long this should actually take. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a banner timer set to 4000, which is going to be 4 seconds inside JavaScript. And again, at any point inside the code, you can actually go ahead and change this. So if you're just testing something and need to have the banner switching really fast, you can set this one to 1 or 2, so you can actually see it faster. And if you want the banner to be 8 seconds long instead of 4, you can change it to 8000. So now that we have this, we need to create a function that actually changes the images using JavaScript. So what we're going to go and do is say that we have a function that is called banner loop, parentheses, curly brackets. And then inside of this function here, we're going to start out by creating an if statement that actually says, if we're inside banner status number 1, then the images needs to behave in this way. So right now we're going to say if banner status is equal to 1, then do this block of code inside this if statement. Now what I wanted to do inside the if statement, if we do actually have a status as 1, is to give all the banner images a position absolute right styling, meaning that right now we're going to tell it that the images should be this many pixels from the right side of the container. And then we're just basically going to manipulate these numbers each time we get to a new status inside the website. Now, a second thing we need to include in here when it comes to styling is also to make sure we have the images in the right layers using a setIndex CSS styling to make sure we don't get any kind of wonky or weird effects when the images actually slide on top of each other, because essentially we could actually risk that one image, when it needs to slide in and replace the other one, actually slides under the current image. We should always have the next image slide on top of the current image. And we're going to do that using, again, CSS styling using JavaScript. So we're going to go ahead and start out by saying we have a document dot get element by ID parentheses. And then we're going to go ahead and say we have a image ban 1, which is going to be the first image up here, that is right here. And we want to do something with it using CSS. So right now we want to style the banner, or at least give it a different styling using JavaScript. So we're going to say we want to style the right side inside this position absolute, set it equal to double quotes 0 pixels. Meaning that right now image number 1, which is image ban 1, is going to be leaning all the way up against the right side of the container, and then it's just going to continue to the left side until it has this 100% width. So right now we should have the first image fitting perfectly inside the banner container. If I then go back inside the styling, I also want to make sure it has a set index set to something like 1000. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we have here. And I'm going to go ahead and say we target the same banner, which is going to be image ban number 1. And I want to style something which is not going to be a right, but instead a set index. So we're going to say set index with a big I, which is how we actually style the set index using JavaScript. And I'm going to go ahead and set it to 1000, just to give it some kind of set index hierarchy or some kind of layer using CSS. And then we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing for image ban number 2 and 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, paste it down 2 more times, and change it from 1 to 2 in the middle 2 ones. And the last one, we're going to change it to image ban number 3. Now we need to change the numbers in here because right now the first image, which is image banner number 1, is perfectly centered inside this image banner. Now the second image banner is going to be positioned differently. So we want image banner number 2 to be the next image that slides in, meaning that this image right now technically needs to be positioned on the right side of this banner because it needs to slide in and fit inside this container. So in order to give it this outside position, we need to style it with a position right, which is not 0 pixels, but minus 1200 pixels. So right now this image is going to be a negative 1200 pixels to the side, meaning that the left side of the image is going to start right where the image container stops. Then we're going to do the exact same thing for image span number 3, which instead is going to be 1200 pixels to the left side of the image banner container. So we're going to say not 0 pixels, but 1200 pixels. So I hope it makes sense to you guys that what we're actually doing here is positioning the images on the left side, the center, and the right side of the container. Now the image span number 2 set index should not be 1000, because right now we want this image to slide in on top of the center image. So it should actually have a higher set index than the current centered image, which is image span number 1 that has 1000. So this set index should be 1000 something that's actually higher than 1000, which I'm just going to go ahead and set to 1500 just to have some kind of number in here. Then the last one down here, because it's on the left side, and it has to go all the way back and be positioned on the right side after the image is switched next time, I'm going to set it to a lower number than 1000. So I'm going to set this one to 500. Then after the banners has switched around using the CSS styling here, we need to make sure we change the banner status. Right now it's set to 1. So I'm going to go ahead and copy what we have up here and paste it below the if statement and say banner status should now be 2. So now we're changing it so the next time we do actually run this banner loop, it's not going to go ahead and run this block of code here, because the next time the banner status is not going to be equal to 1. Now we should actually not include this here. We should actually include it inside the if statement, like so. Now before creating the next if statement that has a banner status equal to 2, I'm going to do a second thing inside of here. Because when we start looping this loop in here, I want to make sure that the back image, which right now is image 3, when it is to go and loop behind the actual slider, I want to give it an opacity set to 0, just to make sure we don't get any kind of screw ups when the images switch around, since we do essentially have 3 images switching around inside the banner. So just to make sure we don't get any kind of other images showing, I'm going to give it a opacity set to 0, just to make it invisible. So I'm going to go ahead and go below what we have here inside the document get element by IDs, and I'm going to set a document. Actually, we could just copy paste what we have up here. That might be easier. Like so. So I'm going to go ahead and go inside my numbers here, change it to 1. Make sure we style the opacity like so. And again, if this doesn't really make sense with the opacity, I will show you guys a bit later when we do actually get this banner working why we need to have the opacity. So right now I want to do this. What I also want to make sure we do is that the image that actually disappears is I want to make sure the image that actually is on the left side that goes behind the actual banner has an opacity as 0. So right before we do actually change all these numbers, the last image that needs to go all the way back in line, which is number 3, because right now image number 3 is going to be on the left side, has an opacity set to 0. So it is invisible when it actually goes back in line. So now we almost have all the code we need to have inside banner status, which is equal to 1, because I want to make sure we get this done properly. So right now I want to time these so we don't execute everything at once, because it might be too much for the JavaScript to handle. So I'm going to go ahead and go inside my if statement, and right before we do all the document get element by IDs in here, at least the center one, I'm going to set a timer. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a set time out, which is a function inside JavaScript that sets a timer for when this would actually happen. I'm going to say parentheses, semicolon, and inside these parentheses, I'm going to say it needs to run a function after a certain amount of seconds. I'm going to say function, parentheses, curly brackets, move down to the next line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take all these document get element by IDs, copy and delete them, and then insert them inside this set timeout function here. So I'm just going to go and move them out so it looks nice. And then inside the set timeout function, we need to make sure we tell it how many seconds should there pass before we run all these functions in here, at least all these get element by ID JavaScript code we have in here. So right now, before the last parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and say comma, because we do have 2 parameters inside set timeout. And the second one is going to be the time it needs to take before we run all this code. So right now I'm going to set it to 500 milliseconds, which is going to be half a second. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this code that we just wrote in here, paste it below, because I also want to set a timeout for the last document get element by ID we have down here that sets the opacity. So I'm going to go ahead and just move it out. Go ahead and copy what we have here as well. So I have the closing part of the actual function. And then I'm going to go ahead and change it to 1000. So we have 1 second before it actually needs to run this code here. So basically what I just did here is I told it, okay, as soon as we load this loop, we need to set the first image on the left side to an opacity set to 0. Then afterwards, after half a second, it's going to take the images and move them around. So the third image over here on the left side is going to be moved to the back. And then inside the next loop, we're going to set the opacity to 1, just like we did down here using the opacity setting inside image band number 2. Now I just noticed I did a small mistake inside my code, which was that my opacity stylings have to be inside the same banner. So right now I have one set to image banner number 3 and another one to image banner number 2. Both of these have to be image banner number 2, because when the image goes back in line, it needs to have an opacity set to 0, and then we want to change the opacity back to 1. So we need to have it inside the same banner, or at least the same image, when it goes back in line. So now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and create the if statements for the other 2 statuses we're going to get. So right now, status number 1 is going to be the first image showing inside the banner. Then we need to have an if statement that says that status number 2 is going to be the second image, and then status number 3 is going to be the third image. Okay, so going back inside the banner loop, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this if statement, paste it below here, change the status to 2. And then the next thing we're going to change in here is that right now, because the third image is going to be the back in the line when we get to the second loop, we're going to go ahead and say that the third image should have an opacity set to 0, because when it goes back in line, we then want it to change back to opacity 1. Then inside the actual stylings here, we just need to switch around the stylings inside each image, because right now the image is just basically going to switch places using the right styling. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that the first image span up here is going to be going down to the bottom instead, like so. Then the next one is going to be 3, and then 2. So this was actually a lot easier than just changing all the numbers over here, I figured. So we could just change the numbers inside the ID we want to get. So now we're basically just switching the stylings of all the image banner IDs, which is going to be what makes the banner actually switch to the left side. And after doing this, we're just going to change the banner status to 3. So right now we're going into the third loop, and we need to make sure we don't have an if statement here. We need to have an else if statement. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we have here. And then we're going to change the last one so it matches this, this pattern that we're creating inside the else if statements. So right now the banner status should be 3. The last opacity should be of the image span number 1. And again, also at the bottom here. And we want to set the image banner status to 1, because now we're going back to the first loop up here, which is the if statement where banner status is equal to 1. And we also want to switch around the IDs inside the get elements in here. So right now the next one in line should be 3, 3, 1, 1, 2, and 2. And then when we go back to the first one, everything is going to go back to normal, and then it's just going to continue in an endless loop looping. Okay? So now that we did this, we can actually go ahead and refresh the browser. You guys will notice that nothing really happens inside the banner, because we also need to actually initialize the loop and have it run each couple of seconds. So the way we're going to do that is by going back inside our JavaScript code, go to the top here. And then what I want to do is I want to say that when we load the web page the first time, it should activate the banner loop down here. And the reason I want to do that is because right now inside the CSS styling, we have no styling set to right and set index, or opacities for that matter. So by running the loop just one time, when we do actually load the browser, we set these numbers inside our banner. So I'm just going to go ahead and say we have a window dot unload is equal to a function curly brackets, and then inside this function we just want to run banner loop one time. So we're just going to go ahead and load it just one time in here as soon as the web page is actually loading. Then after doing this, we can actually go ahead and set the automatic timer that keeps rolling in the next image. So now we actually just gave it the first stylings in here by doing it on load. And then afterwards, we need to create a function that keeps loading the images inside the loop. So we're going to go ahead and go down to the next line and say we have a variable called something like start banner loop. It could be any kind of name you guys want to give it. I'm going to set it to equal to a function called set interval parentheses semicolon, and inside the parentheses we're going to set a function. So we're going to say function parentheses curly brackets, move down to the next line, and then inside this function here we're going to say that we want to run banner loop, which is down here, and run it each couple of seconds, or at least how many seconds we determined inside the banner timer up here. So what we need to do in here, just like the set timeout down here that has 2 parameters inside of it, we're going to have 2 parameters inside the set interval function inside JavaScript. So right before the parentheses here, we're going to say comma, space, and tell it how many seconds we want it to wait until it loads the next image. So right now we did actually decide that inside our banner timer up here. So I'm just going to copy the variable and insert it. So right now we do actually have 4000 milliseconds inside the set interval function down here. So now if I were to actually go inside my browser and load it, you guys will notice that after about 4 seconds, it should actually change the image inside the browser like so. So now we do actually have an image banner working inside the browser, but then again, we want to give it a couple of effects because this is just a very basic banner. And right now if I were to actually hover my mouse cursor inside the banner, it just still keeps going. So I want to change that so when I leave the banner, it should actually continue, and then when I enter the banner, it should stop. So if I were to go inside my code again, I'm going to go ahead and go below my start banner loop function down here and say we want to start up a document dot get element by ID parentheses punctuation, and then I want to set some kind of event, meaning that right now if I were to do something inside the browser, then it needs to run a certain function inside this event handler here. So if I were to say on mouse enter, meaning that when my mouse actually enters this element we're targeting inside our get element by ID, then we need to run the function. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a banner container called main-banner, which is right now the entire container inside the banner. Then it should go ahead and do the function. So I'm just going to say equal to function, parentheses, curly brackets. And then what we want to do is we want to clear the interval that we started previously inside up here. So the way we do that is by writing parentheses, semicolon, and just basically saying we want to stop the variable we have here called start banner loop. So just clearing it, meaning it's not going to run anymore. After doing this, I can then go to the next line and say when we do actually exit with our mouse, then we want to run the banner loop one more time. So I'm just going to copy what we have here, paste it in, and say on mouse leave, we want to go ahead and activate the actual loop again and again on certain intervals inside the website. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and copy the variable up here that has a set interval. And what we need to make sure we don't do is write variable and then the name of the actual variable. Because if I were to write variable down here, then we're creating a new variable instance, which is not going to be good. Because then when we do actually enter the banner again, then it doesn't know where this variable actually is, because it's not this one up here anymore running, it's the new one down here, and it doesn't know where it is because it's inside a function. So we need to make sure we set the same start banner loop as we had up here. And we do that by not creating the var statement right before it. Okay, so we need to make sure we don't do that. So now that we did this, we can actually go ahead, go inside our browser, refresh, and if I were to wait a couple of seconds just to make sure it still works, there we go. If I were to enter my mouse, right now you guys will notice that it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't keep sliding. And then if I exit again, it's going to go ahead and set the interval one more time. So we're just going to wait for it. There we go. Now the next thing I'm going to create inside this banner is going to be the buttons that actually allow for us to change the images manually, which are right now, as you guys can see inside my demo here from the beginning, these two arrows we have on the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and go back inside my index file. I'm going to go up inside the images we have up here inside the div tags. And right before the actual images, I'm going to insert the buttons. So I'm going to create a div, which is going to be my first button, which is going to be the back button. And I'm going to give it a class set to image ban button. Not spelled out completely, just imgbanbtn. And I'm going to go ahead and set a second class to image ban button dash previously or previous. And the reason I'm doing this is because I need just some kind of standard styling for the buttons. Then the second class is going to take care of the actual position of the button. Next thing we want to do is actually set an ID, so we can actually target it using JavaScript. And I'm going to go ahead and set an ID as the exact same thing as we gave it as the second class here, since we won't have more buttons called the exact same thing here. I'm just going to go ahead and save it. And now that we have this, I'm just going to go ahead and include the second button, which is going to be on the right side, which is going to be the next button. It's going to be right after the images, like so. And instead of previous, I'm going to set it to next, like so. Then I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back inside my style sheet. And now I'm going to go ahead and style the buttons. So I'm going to go to the bottom and say we have a class called image ban button, curly brackets. I'm going to give it a width set to 40 pixels. And again, you guys can change the numbers here if you want to have a different looking button. Then I'm going to set a height to 40 pixels. I'm going to go and set a background color to black. So I'm just going to say hashtag 000. And then I'm going to set a border radius. And again, basically what I'm just doing here is styling it so it looks somewhat nice. So I'm going to say dash radius, set it to maybe 4 pixels. I'm going to give it a position absolute. And again, this is so we can actually determine where the button needs to be inside the container. So I'm going to set it to a top, which is going to be equal to 180 pixels. And the reason for that is that right now we have a banner which is 400 pixels tall. So I need to take half of that and then minus 20 pixels, because right now the height is 40 pixels. So in order to actually get this centered vertically, we need to have a top set to 180 pixels. Then we're going to go ahead and say we have a set index set to 2000. And the reason for that is because inside the image banner, we set the set index to 500, 1000, and 1500, meaning that right now we need to make sure that this button is on top, giving it a set index as 2000, so we can always see the button. Then I'm going to go down to the next line, give it an opacity to 0.8, just so we don't have the button, like a really strong button all the time, except for when we hover on it. And then I'm going to go ahead and say we have a cursor set to pointer, which means that when I actually enter my mouse cursor inside the button, we should get the link icon with the mouse cursor, so we get this hand symbol. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this, the styling we just did, give it a hover effect, and tell it to change the opacity to 1. That might be too much. Let's actually go ahead and say 0.9. So now that we gave the buttons a hover effect, we can actually go ahead and style the first button, which is the previous one. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to my next line here. I'm going to say we have a class called image ban button dash prev, which stands for previously or previous. Then I'm going to open up the curly brackets, and then we're going to go ahead and set a left, because we need to decide should this button be on the left side or the right side. And I'm going to go ahead and set it to 5 pixels from the left side. Then I'm going to go ahead and set a background image. And right now inside the folder you guys downloaded from my description, there should be 2 button images. So I'm just going to go ahead and include this one inside as a background for the first one. So I'm going to say URL and set this one to have an image folder / arrow - left .png. Then we're going to say background size set to 60%, just to make sure we don't have the arrow taking up the entire button inside of it, because I don't think that looks nice. And I'm going to go ahead and set a background position set to center. Then I'm going to say background repeat and set it to no repeat, like so. Then we're just going to go ahead and copy this and then style the next button, which is the image ban button next. So just going to go ahead and change that to next and set the right side to 5 pixels and then change the image name to right. So now we basically have all the styling for the buttons inside the browser. So if we were to actually show you guys, now we have 2 buttons in here. One is left, one is right, and it changes opacity when we do actually hover on it. The next thing we need to do is actually make sure when we do actually click it, that something will actually happen inside the banner. So if we were to go back inside my index file, go down to right after we have the unmouse leave JavaScript, I'm going to go ahead and create a new event handler for the buttons. So I'm going to say document get elements by ID parentheses punctuation, and then I'm going to say we have an event called onClick. So when I do actually click the button, something should happen. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a ID called image ban button dash previous. Then I'm going to say we have it equal to a function, just like up in the previous one up here. Now inside of this function, I'm going to go ahead and give it a JavaScript code that actually goes backwards inside the image banner. So when we do actually click the button, the banner should go the other way around. But before we do that, I would like to do not the previous button first, but the next button, because it's much more simple to do. So I'm going to copy what we have here, paste it below, and then I'm going to go ahead and change it from image ban button previous to next, like so. And then inside the actual function down here, we're going to say we want to run the banner loop when we do actually click the button. So it's just going to run this loop one more time, changing all the statuses and everything, meaning it's just going to go ahead and skip to the next one as soon as we click the button. So now if we were to actually go inside my browser, refresh, you guys will notice that when I click the button, it changes image. Now again, if you think that it might be changing image on its own, right now because I'm actually hovered inside the image, it's not going to change anything until I click the actual button. So in order to get the previous button working, the simple way to do it is to create an if statement. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to check if the banner status is equal to a certain number. So right now, if the banner status is equal to 1, then I want to change the banner status to something else. Because right now, if I were to have banner status number 1, the next one is going to switch to number 2. But I don't want the banner status to switch to number 2, because then it's going to go ahead and run the wrong loop down here because we want to go backwards instead of forwards. So I want to tell it that I want it to go to the banner status that then the next time the banner switches will load up banner status number 3 instead. So if I were to say we want to change the banner status, I'm going to say we want to change it to banner status number 2. So now when we do actually click the button, if banner status is equal to 1, then automatically it should actually load up banner status. Then automatically it should actually, without the button, load up banner status number 2. But because we by clicking this button change the banner status to number 2 instead, the next time it loops is going to loop number 3, not number 2. Okay, if that makes sense. So I'm going to copy what we have here and paste it below, change it to an else if statement. Copy it one more time, paste it down. And I'm going to say that we want to change banner status to 2 and 3. Then when we do actually check for it. And then the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and change it inside of here to 3 and 1. So just changing the banner status to the one ahead of where it actually should be, because we want to, load not the next picture, but the next one again. And then when we do actually click the button, we need to actually run the loop down here. So I'm going to say we have a banner loop, parentheses, which means that we will run the loop as soon as we do this check here. Okay. Now, before we actually check this inside the browser to make sure it's actually working, I did actually notice a couple of spelling mistakes. So right now we have banner status. We need to make sure it's a big capitalized S inside all the words. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that really quickly, like so. Then if I save it, go inside the browser, you guys will notice that we have the mountains. When I click next, we have the food. When I click next, we have the ship. So if I were to click the previous button after the next image, we should essentially not get the food, but we need to go back to the ship image. So if I click it, you guys can see that now we get the ship image. Now, we do have some kind of wonky effect going on when we do actually change backwards, which is because right now inside the banner loop down here, we designed the styling in order to go forward and not backwards. So one way to fix this, and I'm not going to get into that in this episode, but one way to fix it, if you guys are interested, is to create another function like banner loop that we then instead initialize inside our back button. So we could call banner loop number 2 instead. And this new banner loop should be styled opposite. So when we do actually click, the other button, everything needs to switch to the other side instead. So one way to fix it will be doing that. I'm not going to do that in this episode because it's already a long episode and I don't want to do any kind of work that is basically just repeating what we did down here. So you guys can go ahead and play around with it for a little bit because it's good practice. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to insert the text inside the banners, because right now I have no text in here, and inside the demo we had text in here. So going back inside our banner, going inside our code, I'm going to go ahead and go up inside our images up here inside the index file. Inside the index file, I'm going to go ahead and create a div box. So we're going to say div, give it a class, set to image ban dash box, just to give it some kind of class name. And this box in here is going to contain all the text for this banner. So inside this image ban box, I'm going to say we have a H2 element. The first one could be sail the seas. Then we might have a paragraph underneath it. And inside of here, we could say on real wooden ships, comma, and at sea, punctuation. Just to have some kind of text in here. Then I'm going to go ahead and copy this, paste it inside the other two. Then I'm going to go ahead and change the text. So we have the second one saying try exotic dishes. Now I'm not going to change the paragraph down here because you guys can do it yourself. But the last one we can go ahead and say not sail the seas, but see the mountains. Let's actually spell that correctly, like so. And then we can actually go ahead and style it inside the styling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom of my style sheet. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and style the text inside, these boxes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a default styling by saying we have a class called main-banner. Inside this main-banner, we have a class called image-ban-box. And inside of it, we have an h2 element. Then I'm going to say we have a font family, just to give it some kind of font, set to Arial. We have a font size, set to 60 pixels, and we have a color, set to #white. Then I'm going to go ahead and style the paragraph instead of the h2 element. Say we have a p tag. It should have the same font family, but we're going to change the size to 16 pixels instead. I'm also going to go ahead and give it a padding top, just to make sure it's not too close to the h2 element. So I'm going to say padding -top, set it to 6 pixels, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and style the actual boxes that this text is inside of, because we want to be able to move the boxes wherever we want it inside the actual banner. So I'm going to go ahead and say below here that we have a class called main-banner. Then I have an ID called image-ban3 space, and then I have a class called image-ban-box, curly brackets. So now we're just basically styling the image-ban-box inside the image-ban3 only, okay? So what I can do here is I can say we have a padding top set to 220 pixels. I have a padding left set to 100 pixels. And now I can just go ahead and copy paste this a couple of times. So we can say we have a banner called 2 and 1. And then I can just go ahead and change the numbers in here. So I can actually say from the top, we could have inside the second one. Then I'm going to say we have a padding right set to 100 pixels. Then I'm going to go ahead and say we have a float right, because I want it to be on the right side of the banner instead of the left side. And I'm going to go ahead and say we have text dash align right, just to make sure the text is aligned properly inside the box as well. Now we can go ahead and change the last one down here, which is the image banner 1. I'm just going to go ahead and say instead of having 220 pixels from top, I'm going to say 70. So now if I go back inside my website, you guys can see that now we do actually have text in here. And this is actual text and not text inside the image itself, because this is better for SEO optimization. So we should do it this way inside our websites. If I were to change images, you guys can see the text is actually positioned differently inside the different images. So this is how we create an image banner using JavaScript. And again, this was kind of to give you guys an exercise to do, with all the stuff we've learned in the previous episodes, in order to give you guys an idea about what JavaScript can actually do. Because one thing I do actually regret about this series here is that we didn't do enough exercises. So I hope this one gave you guys an idea about what exactly JavaScript can do inside a website. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.